If you want books which are going to stay with you forever, these are the ones. Emotional War Stories is the one where you get the most devastating human tales. They kind of show you what it costs to love, hope, and crave for a normal life when the world is falling apart. So, today I'm sharing with you war stories that shattered me quietly. The ones where you turn the page, blink, and realize you've started caring for people, grieving for people who might not even have existed in real life. First up are two books from my favorite author. These two books are my favorite books of all time. Yes, they're the books by Khaled Hosseini. Khaled Hosseini is the type of author who is going to break you in silence, not from like dramatic shock moments, but like characters and plots and relationships that is tough to recover from. He's an Afghan himself. He has first-hand kind of witnessed the impacts of war, what it does to people. So when you read his stories, they do not feel like fiction. They kind of feel like his memories.
And I remember seeing these women walking down the street with their children and thinking about, what is their life like? What are their inner thoughts? What are their inner lives? Do they have hopes? They have dreams? Are they disappointed? How do they feel? And when I sat down to write my second novel, I started thinking about those women, and I can't say that either of my two main characters in Thousand Splendid Suns were based on any of those women per se, but they were based on the kind of the collective spirit of all the women that I met in Kabul in the spring of 2003.
His book, A Thousand Splendid Suns, it's just not about war. It's about these two women who are very different from each other, who might not even had shared a common life if the circumstances were not that of a war. But they end up together. They forge this relationship, this friendship, which is so precious, which is kind of like the only hope with the backdrop of the despair times that they are in. The second one, which is the kite runner, it follows like how a wrong choice which you make as a kid can follow you forever. Of course, there's this war going on and there's a lot of problems because of it, but sometimes one of the hardest battles that one have to fight is the one from within. You need to fight with yourself to make things right. These books have stayed with me not for days but for years. I had first read them in high school and they still live in my head rent free. I feel every line that is written in the book is intentional, it's heavy, it's emotional, it's raw, and it's also very beautiful. I also like recently reread A Thousand Splendid Suns to see if it has aged well with time, but I just feel that the book hit even stronger. The emotions felt even more raw, and the pain and the his writing felt even more sharp. I honestly don't understand how Husseini can write pain in a way that is so beautiful yet so human, because pain is just not like in a physical exterior, it's interior, it's about humans as well. So when you're reading his characters, you undergo with them this journey and you experience the pain with them through his words. He will make you feel everything without ever even being graphic. If you have to read just one author on war, please let it be Khaled Hosseini. You won't be disappointed. Next up is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Kato. This was my best book of October. You can check out the full video. Two words to describe this book is beautiful devastation. This book had completely wrecked me. It follows this medical student Salma, whose life is just turned upside down by the war and just doing the common things in life, taking a shower, going shopping. These most mundane, boring things in life become difficult in the backdrop of the Syrian war. And right in the middle of all of it, she finds love which she doesn't want to lose, and that is the only hope in the times of disparity.
What is the symbolism behind lemons? It was an homage to Nizar Qabbani's poem verse, which is every lemon shall bring forth a child and the lemons will never die out. He wrote this poem about Syria. And there's also another saying that in Homs, where the book is based, that every house there has a lemon tree. So these lemon trees, these lemons have existed for centuries. And so up throughout the centuries, a lot of things have happened and they have still continued to grow. And so that's what these lemons symbolize. They symbolize hope and persistence and resilience. And that's what I want this book to be, a symbol of hope.
I couldn't stop reading this book. I had to binge read it. The romance in this book hits in such a different way, like it's holding on to this stubborn hope against the whole world collapsing, and that makes it even more beautiful, even more beautiful. When I finished reading this book, I just had to sit for a few minutes in silence, just being grateful for everyday, day-to-day things in life that oftentimes we take for granted. But imagine if a war is going on, these basic things in life becomes luxury which is difficult to afford. This book is so powerful because it's just not hitting you in a way that is like a major headline or a major statistic. It is this quiet robbery of the ordinary life, the ordinary love, the ordinary choice. If you want to read a love story that somehow survives despite war and is so precious and pure, go into this book. You won't regret it. Next up is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. What can you expect from a book but heartbreak if it is narrated by death itself?
I decided to use death as the narrator of the book mainly because, I just heard all the time that war and death are like best friends, and so who better to be hanging around during wartime than death to sort of notice this girl stealing the books, and especially in these horrific times where he was everywhere.
Set in Nazi Germany during World War II, this book tries to tell the story of what it must have felt to be a little girl living through these times who didn't understand war. And the only thing she has is books to escape her day-to-day life, to connect with people, to live a little when the world around her is collapsing. I had really hesitated picking this book just because it looks so heavy, so dense, so long. But I'm so glad I picked this book up. This was one of my first reads of this year and probably one of my most emotional reads of the year. I kind of mentioned it in my video as well. But this book really stayed with me. There's this found family trope in this book, and that meant a lot to me. That kind of was the whole essence of everything for me in this book. Their warmth, their relationship, how it grows, the day-to-day lives. It was so well written that when the grief hit, when the sorrow hit, it made the pain 10 times worse. This book also celebrates the love of reading as a connection, as a joy, as a means of survival that stayed with me for a whole long time. After I finished this book, I was devastated. I might have shed a tear or two, full stop. This book will make you realize that even in times of a war, even when everything is just violent and wrong, that even death has a heart. There is no other book like this one. Next up is The Women by Christian Hanna. Christian Hanna did something brilliant with this book. She showed that war doesn't end on battlefield, it kind of follows you back home.
Well, just to go back a bit, I was a child during the Vietnam War, and my good friend in fourth grade, her father served and was shot down. And so we wore, back in those days, we had the prisoner of war bracelet, which we wore in remembrance of the soldier who was lost, in the hopes that he would come home when we would take it off. And so I had this bracelet on for years and years and years, and was constantly thinking about him and the other soldiers who didn't come home. And then as a girl even, I saw how the soldiers were treated when they did come home. So this was sort of the thing that I wanted to write about, the part of the Vietnam experience that I wanted to write about.
Set during the Vietnam War, this story brings about the voices of women, the nurses, but whose service, whose trauma, whose sacrifice did not matter or were not recognized as well as the men who were fighting in the battle were.
Well, we are all so used to seeing male camaraderie during war, Walter, and it, when I was like writing this book and I set out and Frankie goes to war and she ends up in Vietnam, and she enters her hooch, which is their living quarters. And, there would have been two women there. And I realized that in as difficult a setting as this, those kind of friendships and the humor, the love, the difficulty, the intensity, all of that would would come to fruition, as a friendship between these women to save each other during, this really difficult year.
For me, the book where it hit the most was where it talked about the aftermath of the war. So the main character, Frances, when she returns home and her service is like discredited entirely, it made me so furious. Like, it meant nothing to anyone. Like, it's one thing to live the horrors of the war and survive and come back from it, but it's another thing when you come back and when the world refuses to believe what you had to live through. The silent, the invisible trauma, the PTSD of the war, like, this was the part that scarred me the most. Like, honestly, this book like kind of made me feel pain in a way that I did not expect. This book shows that war is just not end on the battlefield. It's a lifelong grief that people carry back home when they are back. If you want a war book that kind of talks about the hidden wounds that people carry after the war is over, read this book. Next up is The City of Thieves by David Benioff. This book kind of shows how absurd, how random survival can be in times of war. This book is set during the brutal blockade of Leningrad during World War II, where food was so scarce that there are two boys and they are set out on a mission to bring back a dozen eggs. And this emotional task becomes the start of a wild emotional journey.
Really, for me, it was more that eggs are incredibly fragile, and this is the coldest winter in Russian history, and not only are they fragile in terms of they break easily, but they also freeze, which renders them useless. So it was kind of the toughest thing to find, and that for me, the challenge of the search was more important than whatever abstract symbolism the eggs might represent.
As I was reading this, I kind of became very attached to these two boys and the bromance that they start forming. It kind of made me think like how in war, like two random people can be thrown together into a situation, and sometimes this connection, this relationship between them they have is the only soft thing left. This book will remind you that survival in a war, maybe it's always not about strength, it also deals with meeting the right people at the right time. If you want to read a war book that's emotional in a very different way, start here. And the last one, it's a non-fiction. It's the Diary of Anne Frank. And as you know, this is a real girl's diary during the war. Set during World War II while her family was hiding. This book kind of shows that war just doesn't destroy cities. It kind of steals hopes, childhood, and future. And what kind of struck me was that Anne, despite the hiding, despite the situation where she was in, she still wanted these, normal things in life like school, love, friendships. She was looking forward to these things in life.
Anne's bedroom. It's Anne's bedroom, and she shared it with Mr. Pfeffer. So the two of them were here.
So an adult man and Anne sleeping in here for a long time.
She wasn't really happy with that. No, we can read that in the diary.
And the windows, was she able to look outside here, or the curtains had to stay closed?
Yes, they had to stay. They couldn't open the windows, they couldn't take away the curtains because of, you never knew who could see you outside and who could betray you.
I read up this book when I was in middle school, and to date also when I think about the book, it gives me chills. The innocence in this book hits in a way that no other war books could possibly do, because it's just not about imagining horrors. She was literally living them. As a young girl, the way Anne Frank writes was so unbelievably articulate. It's like she's communicating you through time, conveying her hopes, her feelings, her beliefs. This book is a very emotional war non-fiction, because this book will remind you that this is just not a character arc. This was a real child. If there's one war book that everyone should read at least once in their lifetime, it's this book, because this is true. This happened to a real girl. War books just don't tell stories, they also will change you a little bit as a reader. I hope you find one of these books at a right point in your reading journey. Tell me in the comments below which emotional war books stayed with you, and if you're looking for some lighter recommendations, check out my Cozy Books video. Till then, take care, good night, bye bye. Shivratri.